So today we'll be creating debounce like in GitHub. For example, when I type code space, so this has 9 letters, right? But only 4 API calls I've made. So we'll be doing in React. So when I type bad karma, it should not be available. Bad karma. So only one API call has been made, right? Even when I type something like slowly, so only 4 API calls have been made. So the letters are greater than 4. Okay, so we'll be seeing how to do this in React using useEffect. Okay, I have just created a React app. So we got some JSON data. Instead of making an API call, we'll check the username from these JSON data. So we got some CSS. So first in our app.js, we'll have a label HTML for uname. We'll have, and the label will be change username. We'll have an input of type text, right? And the ID will be you name, right? We'll also have a p tag for our message, and when we save this we should see the output, right? So first we'll have two states, one for the user input state and other for the message state, right? So const username set username use state. Initially this will be an empty string, and same for the message as well. Message set message, right? We have not imported the state. Okay, so now we have to make this a controlled input. So to make that, we will create a function, onchange function, for the input. On change input. So this function will set the username. Set username e dot target dot value, right? So after this username is set, we'll feed the username back to the input. So value equals to username, and this onchange function, we place it in our input. On change equals to onchange input. Error should be gone, right? So now after we make this a controlled input, for debouncing we use the useEffect. So the first argument is a callback function, and the second argument is a dependency array, right? Inside our useEffect we'll have a const for our timer. So set timeout. So this receives two arguments. First is the callback, and second is the delay, so 500 milliseconds, right? So inside this timer we'll make the fetch API call. Since we are not doing it, we'll import the JSON data and check. Okay, so import data from ./JSON data. Okay, so inside our timer we'll check if data.sum el, I'll explain the sum method, is equals to user name. Then what you want to do is set message to user name not available, else we set message to user name available, right? So what this sum method does is it loops over the array. So it will loop over this JSON data, and it will loop until this condition is met. So if the condition is met for this element, it will terminate on this element. It will not run the loop for these elements, right? So when the condition is met, it will return true. Okay, so it returns a boolean value, and we also have to clear our timeout. So inside our useEffect return function, so clear timeout. So inside our useEffect return callback, we clear the timeout and we pass the timer. Okay, so here in our dependency, when do we want this useEffect to run? Whenever this value changes, right? Whenever username changes inside the input field, we want this useEffect to run. Okay, we also have to set this in the message inside our JSX. Okay, we'll put a console log to see the debounce. Okay, console.log fetch call, right? So now this should be working. So whenever I change, so I have written a lot of letters here, but only 2 fetch API calls I have made, right? So like this username is available right now, but when I type something, so when I type bad karma, right, it should not be available. Okay, bad karma, so fetch API call, username available. I think I've done, we have not returned. Okay, returned, so this runs no matter what. Okay, that's why it was not updating. So when I enter, so this username is available, like HDFS, this username is available because no one has taken in our database. But when I type bad karma, it should not be available because it's already taken by other user, right? So only 5 API calls I have made, but 8 letters are here. Okay, if we comment the set timeout, if we don't use the debounce, without the debounce, when I type bad karma, 8 API calls are made. So for each letter an API call is made. But when I use the debounce, right? So when I use the debounce, now when I clear the console, now when I type bad karma, only 1 API call is made, says the result. Okay, so this is why debounce is helpful. It helps apps performance. So it can also be used inside a search bar. So I was looking for debouncing in React documentation, so I found this. So here they have introduced a new hook, use deferred value. Debouncing and throttlings are for optimization, but use deferred value is for optimizing rendering, right? So by default it will know if it's a fast device or a slow device. So if the device is fast, then it will be fast. If the device is slow, then it will optimize according to the device, right? So they are saying that debounce and throttling are a blocking. So whenever debounce happens, so React will prioritize the debounce and stop the rendering process. I got reminded of the React icons site. So whenever we type this, so notice how this stops spinning, right? I think they have implemented debounce. That's why. So we'll use this hook in some other video when I have to learn and explain. So when the input field is empty, we don't want any message, right? To achieve it, we can just add a condition. If e.target.value is an empty string, then we set the message as an empty string. And inside our useEffect, if username is an empty string, then we return. So this code will not execute when username is empty string, right? When we reload, we don't see the message when the input is an empty, right? Okay, that's all guys. Thank you for watching.